Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Mrs. Nita Kar, an educator with 25 years of experience teaching high school students. I firmly believe that a teacher's ultimate goal is to help students find their true potential and empower them to become capable, confident, and compassionate individuals who positively impact and enrich society. So I shall begin my today's topic. The practice of a healer, therapist, teacher, or any helping professional should be directed toward his or herself first. Because if the helper is unhappy, he or she cannot help many people. This quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous monk and author, beautifully encapsulates the importance of teacher well-being. As educators, we always strive to create a positive environment for students. However, the demands of teaching can sometimes take a toll on our own physical, mental, and emotional well-being. As an educator with 25 years experience, I have witnessed firsthand the intricate relationship between teacher well-being and student learning. So this presentation will explore the complex factors that affect teacher well-being, its impact on student learning outcomes, and how educators, administrators, and parents can come together to foster teacher well-being and thereby achieve academic success. So why teacher well-being matters? Teachers are the backbone of education. Their well-being directly impacts teaching quality. Promoting teacher well-being ensures a positive learning environment for students. High rates of stress and burnout among teachers affect retention and performance. It is a well-known fact that teachers who experience well-being are better able to bond with their students, creating a positive classroom climate. They are more sensitive to the needs of diverse students. In general, they are in a better position to communicate or connect with the students. Let us examine each of these points in detail. Now, as educators, we are no strangers to challenge. As an educator, we are required to wear many hats. We are not just instructors, but we are mentors, we are counselors, and sometimes role models, and sometimes we even act as surrogate parents. So the challenges faced by a teacher are many, multifaceted. I'm going to focus here on some of the common challenges. Classroom management and student behavior. Now, this is very essential. When a teacher enters the classroom, before she can even teach, she needs to prepare the environment. So the first thing that she needs to do is ensure that she is able to manage or handle the students. Now, another challenge that teachers do face is administrative workload at home. This is something you ask any teacher and they will agree that this is one part of the job which nobody enjoys. The endless paperwork. It takes away time from our actual work, basically, that is teaching. And of course, it leads to exhaustion. And when you're exhausted, you don't really put in your best efforts. So this is one major challenge faced by teachers. Then come parental expectations and communication. Parents have their own set of expectations, teachers have their expectations, and they're not always going to match. And sometimes there is a problem in the communication. Teachers do have to deal with difficult parents who don't seem to understand what is the best possible way of dealing with their child. So it's not just challenging students that we deal with, we also need to deal with difficult parents. And after an exhausting day, we are hardly left with any time to devote to our family and other responsibilities. So, this lack of time is again a major challenge. How to manage the time without feeling any exhaustion. What are the pressures that lead to teacher burnout? The pressures are multifaceted and they vary from teacher to teacher, school to school. So I have discussed here some of the common points. Excessive workload and long hours. This is a complaint by most teachers. However, I personally feel it's not the workload in itself that is the problem. We teachers are used to working long hours, yes. It is the nature of the work. It is not always that what we do is productive. We do it because we have been asked to do it. And when we feel that this is not going to benefit the student in any way, I'm speaking strictly from a teacher's perspective. So when a teacher feels that this is a non-productive work, obviously that can lead to frustration and stress. Another important factor, lack of support from administration. Now this, again, let me say as perceived by the teachers, especially when we are asked to do work, administrative work, paperwork, which we feel will not benefit the student in any, which may or may not be correct. The administrators have their own perspective, teachers have their own perspective. So the teachers would perceive this as a lack of support. Sometimes there is actually a lack of communication between the administrator and the teachers. So that can also lead to this feeling of being unsupported. One major factor I have come across throughout my teaching career, or I shouldn't say throughout, when I started teaching 25 years back, the situation was very different. I think teachers had more autonomy about how they interacted in their class, how they delivered their lessons. Unfortunately, times have changed and we no longer have that kind of autonomy. So the lack of autonomy and the decision making power would definitely affect the teaching quality. You can't be expected to give in your best when you're following someone instruction and being asked to teach in a particular manner, because each teacher will have her own method with which she may be comfortable. Someone may be comfortable with storytelling. Someone may be tech savvy and would enjoy taking technology aided classes. And there, these are just a few that I mentioned. There are many ways in which one can approach teaching, or rather, I should say, in which one can engage the interest of the student. So ultimately, that is important, to engage the student. So without student engagement, then the outcome is nil. So the lack of autonomy and decision making power, this definitely acts as a hindrance to the process of innovative teaching. Lack of recognition and appreciation. Teachers are working all the time. It's emotionally very exhausting dealing with students, peers, parents, administrators. And at the end of the day, all they want is a little recognition and appreciation. But that doesn't always happen. Maybe in many schools, the school leader is mindful of that and tries to appreciate whatever little achievements, little or big, doesn't matter. The school leader tries to appreciate. But this doesn't always happen in all schools. Now, I'm speaking from my perspective of working in private schools. I've never worked in government schools. So I do not know the exact situation in a government school. But I can only speak from my experience of teaching in private schools. Unrealistic expectations. This is another factor that we deal with and which leads to pressure. So the administrators have unrealistic expectations of us. The parents have. In what manner? Well, obviously, we are expected to complete our syllabus on time. That is something every teacher needs to do. But we are to be given the time to do that. Now, during our teaching hours, if we are assigned other duties, then that definitely cuts into our teaching time. And then completing the syllabus is one problem. So, in my opinion, more important than completing the syllabus is getting the child interested in the subject. Because once you do that, the student will himself or herself progress ahead, learn on their own. Because as teachers, that is what we want, to make the student independent, not dependent on us. So this mad rush to complete the syllabus, and not just complete the syllabus, that is one aspect here. The other one, that they should get good marks. Marks don't necessarily determine how much the student has learned. They don't. So this focus on marks and nothing else. We talk of holistic approach to teaching, and yet the sad reality is ultimately it comes down to marks. Everybody wants to see good marks, but then the marks that a student gets would also depend on the student's own aptitude. Of course, it would depend on the student's interest. It is not necessary that a student who has performed poorly in a particular test is lacking aptitude. No, it could. There can be many reasons why a student has not performed well in a single test. There could also be reasons why students do not perform well, maybe over a long period of time. They could be facing their own problems. So this expectation from the administrators that every student or the majority of students should score above 90, that puts undue pressure on the teacher. Another cause for teacher pressure is teacher shortage, especially in government schools in our country. We are aware that there is a huge shortage of teachers at the primary level, especially in rural areas. So when there is teacher shortage, obviously the workload of the other teachers will increase. Even in private schools, there is a teacher shortage because obviously private schools will try to maximize their profit. And to do that, they will try to optimize maybe the number of teachers. And what they think is the optimum number may not exactly match our expectations, because when our workload increases, obviously we're going to feel overwhelmed and stressed out. Now, spending the whole day with students, managing their diverse needs, communicating with parents, communicating with administrators, the whole job, it has an emotional toll on us. By the end of the day, when we reach home, we're very exhausted, hardly left with any energy to do anything else. And obviously, it becomes very difficult to pay attention to our own kids because we are so tired by the end of the day. Emotional exhaustion is what tires us more rather than physical exhaustion. So, poor work life balance is one major factor that contributes to teacher stress and burnout. And of course, insufficient resources can be a factor when a teacher feels frustrated without proper resources, without proper infrastructure. It is very difficult for a teacher to deliver a lesson effectively. Now, in private schools that have a fee structure which only affluent parents can afford, will generally not have this kind of a problem. But there are many schools where the resources are indeed a problem. So all these pressures would definitely lead to stress and ultimately to burnout. It is important that we recognize these factors which lead to teacher stress, and uh, together with the administrators and parents, the educators need to work out solutions that will help maintain teacher well. So how does all this affect the student? We call this the ripple effect. Basically, how the teacher well-being impacts student learning. Teacher well-being influences the classroom environment. That is, it directly influences the classroom environment, and that would affect the student learning outcome. Teacher stress and burnout can lead to decreased student motivation and engagement. This is quite obvious. The teacher is stressed, she will have difficulty in the classroom managing the students or delivering her lessons or creating engaging lessons. Positive teacher-student relationships are crucial for academic success. Let us examine these in detail. So, how teacher wellness would affect a positive classroom or bring about a positive classroom culture. A teacher who pays attention to her well-being, to her emotional and mental well-being, is more likely to form bonds with the student or be able to connect with the student. So that would lead to improve teacher-student relationship. As a result, that would increase the student engagement, because when the teacher is able to connect with her students, I will use her here, which also includes male teachers, of course, but mostly we know that in the teaching profession, we find women teachers more often, especially at the school level. So when a teacher is cheerful and mindful of her uh, mental well-being, she's able to connect better, she's able to uh, prepare engaging lessons, and thereby motivating the students. This would lead to enhanced creativity and innovation in the classroom. Both the teacher and student, both would be motivated to work creatively and come up with innovative ideas. So this would lead to increased academic achievement. The student would definitely perform better, because now they are involved in activities which basically help them with whatever lesson the teacher is trying to impart. A teacher who experiences well-being is better able to provide individualized support. In a class of, say, 30 to 40 students, uh, it's better if we have only 30 students in a class. It is possible for a teacher to give individualized attention. But that is possible only when the teacher does not feel overwhelmed or stressed out. Now, of course, that is again one of the reasons for stress, because in many private schools, we know that this ratio is not maintained. The number can go up to anyway 40, 45, sometimes even 50. Now, when 50 students have one class teacher, or even for the subject teachers who are teaching, addressing 50 students and ensuring that each one of them understands is a big deal. It is, I won't say impossible, but that would require a lot of. So if the ratio, student-teacher ratio is maintained at 30:1, that would definitely be more achievable. So a teacher who experiences well-being is able to provide this individualized support, which is very, very essential for the success of the students. Now, when the students perform well, the students are happy, obviously, that will also improve the parent-teacher communication. Not only improve, there is increased parent-teacher communication as the teacher will give regular updates to the parents regarding the progress of their wards. So this would lead to increased and improved parent-teacher communication. This would also lead to increased student resilience because students look upon the teachers as role models. Obviously, when the teacher behaves as a role model, if the teacher is going to be stressed out and anxious, that is not going to have a positive impact on the students. So a teacher who exhibits resilience in class will automatically increase the student resilience. And a teacher who creates a positive classroom environment can achieve much more because that would benefit both, of course, the teacher and the student. The student learning would improve, that would lead to academic success. In short, a teacher who experiences well-being is able to create a positive classroom culture that is characterized by inclusivity, empathy, and compassion. Let us see what happens when a teacher who is overwhelmed with the workload and is emotionally exhausted when such a teacher enters a classroom. For obvious reasons, the teacher is unable to pay much attention to the lesson or is unable to maybe prepare an engaging lesson. So that would lead to decreased student engagement. The negative emotional climate that the teacher creates, that would pass on to the students. And so that would lead to student anxiety and stress as well. So a teacher who is facing anxiety is more likely to maybe shout at the students. Though these days we are very mindful of how we deal with our students, but sometimes maybe a student behavior is what causes the teacher to shout. But I would personally say, no matter how the student behaves, a teacher does not have the right to shout at the students. Teachers should treat the students with respect. I think once they do that, the students will automatically begin to behave themselves. So anyway, when a negative emotional climate is created in the classroom, this would lead to obviously impaired teacher-student relationship. There would be a lack of trust. The students would not trust the teacher, and this in turn would affect their academic performance. We all know quite well, even in our childhood, we always scored well in those subjects where we liked the teacher. In simple terms, sorry. And whenever we did not like a teacher, we didn't want to actually learn that subject at all. So this is something everyone is familiar with, that for us to get interested in a subject, it is the teacher's duty to get the students interested in the subject. And this can be done only when the teacher can connect with the students. That is the first step. Connect with the students, gain their trust. Only then will they listen to you. Another effect of teacher stress would be that they are unable to differentiate as to what approach they need to take for the different students, because different students will have different needs and the teacher needs to approach accordingly. The approach used for teaching someone who is academically inclined is very different from the approach needed for a student who seems to lack an interest in academics. So a teacher who is experiencing stress may not be able to give attention or pay attention to this fact. And this would have a negative impact on student self-esteem, especially those vulnerable students who are very shy in class and who are not doing well academically, maybe. So they don't really want to ask questions in class, thinking that they will be perceived as being stupid. So it is for the teacher to bring out the best in every student. Whatever be the category of the student, first of all, we shouldn't be categorizing them. So, and whatever the background of the student, students come from diverse backgrounds. So it is the teacher's duty to ensure that all are treated the same. Another factor or point here would be that a stressed out teacher there may be decreased collaboration and communication with their peers or even the administrators, and that would lead to further stress for the teacher. So it's a cycle basically. When you're stressed out, you're unable to communicate with anybody, and when you're unable to communicate and you are unable to get the support of others, this is only going to increase your stress. And once the stress levels reach such a proportion that the teachers are afraid to enter the classroom, what happens next is they may resort to being absent often, because stress can also lead to physical ailments. We know that. So a teacher who is highly stressed out may have a high blood pressure, may have other kinds of problems. Health issues will come up when you are highly stressed out. So that would lead to the teacher being absent very often. And when the teacher is absent very often, obviously that is going to impact the students directly. It would so the learning outcome is impacted there, and there would be a decreased academic performance. In short, a stressed out teacher would end up creating a toxic classroom culture that would be characterized by fear, anxiety, and stress. And we all know that is not something we. So obviously, the need to address teacher well-being. So we need to prioritize teacher well-being. Obviously, this is not something that only the administrators need to think of or only the educators. This is something, of course, which the educators, the administrators, the parents all together need to work on this, on finding a solution. However, I would say that it begins with the educator herself or himself, because prioritizing teacher well-being is not a luxury. It is essential for teachers, for them to perform well in the classroom, or uh, to be able to deliver the lessons effectively. So, how does this self-care begin? Some of these points are that we are all aware of, which we hear about every day these days: mindfulness and meditation practices, yoga. I think, and there are many teachers who I know a few, I won't say many, who actually do this regularly: yoga, meditation, and mindfulness practices that will help to reduce stress and make you feel more calm. Regular exercise like walking, jogging, swimming, or maybe playing a sport, could be anything, table tennis, badminton, whatever interests the teacher. That is also very important to maintain one's physical well-being. Healthy eating habits. This is something we are all aware of. And yet, I find in the teaching profession, there are very, very few who actually adhere to this. What I have observed is the more the stress, the more they eat. So the stress itself causes the teachers to indulge in unhealthy eating, ordering food outside. That's basically, it makes them feel better, maybe for the time being. But ultimately, that is not going to be good for the health. So, though everyone is aware of this, that eating healthy, having a balanced diet is important, to date, I have come across very few teachers who actually adhere to that. What I personally found very useful was creative hobbies. So, during the pandemic, when we were all holed up in our homes, it was tough times for everyone. And being basically locked in your home for long periods of time, that can be devastating. So during that time, I picked up two new hobbies. Just on a whim, I started playing the flute. I never really thought about it before that. And I'm so happy that I picked up that hobby. It instantly helped me to relax, be calm, and forget all my anxieties and worries. Until this day, I continue to play the flute, and I'm so happy that I just started it off, even though on a whim, but that I could still continue. It's been 4 years since I picked up this hobby, and it's still going strong, and I'm pretty certain I will never give up on this. Another hobby that I picked up was drawing, drawing mandalas. So during that time, there were so many YouTube videos available for various kinds of art and all. They are available even now, of course. So I just started by drawing simple mandalas, and to my surprise, I found that that was something like meditation. Drawing a mandala is akin to meditation. You just forget everything else, and it helps you to focus. And basically, I found that these creative hobbies are just one way of expressing your emotions. At the end of the day, that is so important. Some people express emotions through talking verbally, or maybe through writing journals. Journaling has always been advocated for reducing anxiety. I personally found creative hobbies work well with me. Building social support networks. This is so important. Having a circle of friends who are able to understand you, able to understand what you're going through, and provide support. And by provide support, I don't mean that they will just give you advice, but they are there to listen. So it is very important. It is obviously up to the teacher herself or himself to build this support network, or at least the first step begins there. Another important aspect that I learned, that too during the pandemic, was this boundary setting. So at that time, everything was new. We took on online teaching, and obviously we had to upgrade our skills. We had to learn many new things, especially with related to technology, to conduct these online classes, which was in a way good, because learning definitely, I think learning something new always makes one feel happy. So that way it was good. But at the same time, the drawback was, once we started off with all this digital communication, and since we are working from home, we found that basically we were expected to be available all the time, 24 hours. So we would get instructions on do this now, do that now. And everyone was always so hyper checking messages all the time. But what I did was I maintained a certain time period, that beyond this time, beyond 6 p.m. or beyond 7 p.m., I will not read any messages. So this boundary setting is very important. One should learn to say no when necessary, when we find that it is affecting our physical and mental and emotional well. So then one should be able to say no. So prioritizing tasks is very important. important to maintain one's emotional well-being. Another practice which I found helpful, again, this was during the pandemic, because I used to refer to many videos at that point of time, and I came across this gratitude practice. So I think these days there is a lot of talk about this. Basically, you can either maintain a journal, or maybe sometimes I have also seen people talk of a gratitude jar where, every day on a piece of paper, you write down maybe 5 things you're grateful for that day, and you just put it into the jar. Slowly, the jar keeps filling up, and you realize you have so much to be grateful for. That is one thing I have learned. Though I did not maintain a journal, but I made it a practice every day. Mentally, I would thank God for all the things that I had. And I realized what I have is much more than what I don't have. Unfortunately, it is human nature to run after what we don't have. But if we could instead focus on what we have and be grateful for what we have, that will automatically shift your uh, thinking, your perspective, and lead to a happier life. So, by prioritizing self care, this is going to help teachers to reduce stress and burnout, improve their mental, emotional, and physical health, increase their resilience and adaptability, and this in turn would enhance the teaching practice and student relationships, which is essential for academic success. Now, what can school leaders do to support teacher well-being? They have a very important role. In fact, the school climate or the school culture is determined by the head of the school. So, what does the head of the school need to do to make the teachers feel valued, appreciated? Obviously, they need to create a culture of support and appreciation to reduce teacher workload and stress. So, when I say reduce teacher workload, in fact, I'll be discussing each of these points in detail. So, I'll just mention these points here. So, reduce teacher workload and stress. That's very, very important. Prioritize professional development and give opportunities to the teachers for their professional. Provide resources and support that is expected of any school leader. Model healthy behavior. That is, be a role model to your teachers. If you just give advice and you don't yourself follow up on it, obviously, no one will see. Let us examine each of these in detail. How can a leader create a culture of support and appreciation? Regular recognition. It is important that the leader make the teacher feel valued, appreciated. This they can do by just appreciating any achievement of the teacher, whether it is big or small, by maybe a public announcement or just a note of appreciation. Even that will suffice. I remember one of the principals we had on Teachers' Day. She gave a personalized note to every teacher. And just that simple act made us feel so valued, cared for, supported. And that just boosted our morale. And everyone wanted to do their best. So just a simple act by the head of the school can bring about a lot of change. Open communication. This is so important. If you do not make the teacher feel comfortable about expressing her opinion or sharing her feedback, then obviously the teacher is going to keep to herself, keep her ideas to herself, ideas which could possibly benefit the student community. And also, when you try to curb or the teacher's voice, it would lead to a negative school culture. Unfortunately, that is also something I have seen in my career. What happens when a leader is authoritarian and expects teachers to obey? That is the only thing they understand. And that can be very demeaning and very demotivating for a teacher. And the entire school climate then becomes negative, and obviously nobody will benefit from that. Not the teachers, not the students. No one. Build a sense of community. So it is up to the school leader to do that. Build a sense of community. How by maybe uh, organizing some kind of social gathering, maybe going on a picnic, or it doesn't have to always be a picnic, or just having some such uh, activities which will help the teachers to bond with each other. Promote collaboration. So collaborative work will always lead to improvement in the teaching, because when you share your views, your approach with other teachers, then you can follow the best practices. You can come to know of things, which is effective. Not everything that is effective for another teacher may be effective for you, but that way you learn that one can approach a certain problem in a particular way. Sometimes maybe my method is not working. So then I would want to know from other teachers, like how do they deal with a similar situation. So collaboration always helps. Reduce teacher workload and stress. This is very, very important. Teachers often feel that, I have mentioned it earlier, that we do a lot of work which is not exactly beneficial to the student, redundant work. So these administrative tasks, paperwork, one should minimize that. And of course, it is up to the school leader to minimize administrative tasks. I remember that when everything got computerized. Since I joined schools when the schools were not computerized at that point of time. So when we shifted from this manual to the computer age teaching, we were all very happy. Oh, the tasks are going to be all automated, and we don't need to do these manual tasks. But unfortunately, what happened was, now we were doing it digitally as well as manually. So that definitely increased the workload, which could have been very well avoided. So I think it is the administrator's duty to see that redundant work is minimized.
Miss Nita, sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. It's
Yeah.
already 45 minutes and we are, because of the
Okay,
time.
you're running short. Okay, okay. So I will just finish it off in maybe 2-3 minutes.
Yes, please. We need to
Yeah.
end the session as the
Yeah.
session's time itself is max of 45 minutes.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Yeah. So, well, you can see on the PPT itself, I have outlined what all, the strategies that the school leader needs to follow in order to create a positive school culture, basically. So I will not dwell in detail on this because I am required to uh, finish the talk by now. I'll just move on to the next slide. This is actually my almost the last slide, you can say. So NEP, our National Education Policy, recognizes the importance of teacher well-being, and they have come up with certain recommendations to help teachers uh, not only just reduce stress, but to help them uh, improve their teaching quality. So one of these is the continuous professional development. So where teachers are provided with opportunities to upskill, various workshops, attend various workshops, and uh, learn the best practices. So I'll just mention the points here. Improved working conditions, that is very, very important. That they provide a comfortable environment for both teacher and student. Support systems. teacher empowerment. Again, as I mentioned, they need to allow for some autonomy and decision making to the teacher and treat the teacher with respect. That is so important. And of course, technological integration. So, leveraging technology to streamline tasks, which would automatically reduce the manual work. So, in conclusion, I can say that teacher well being is essential for a thriving educational ecosystem. Addressing challenges and promoting self care benefits both teachers and students. Collaborative efforts from teachers, school leaders, and policymakers are crucial. Investing in teacher well being is an investment in student success. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Nita. Thank you for the talk and for patiently explaining each and every point in detail. You have covered all the questions which I prepared to ask you. I'm sure the viewers, whoever, like since there are no audience when they view your talk
Right.
on YouTube, they will have a clear idea about this great topic. Before I end this session, ma'am, anything else you want to mention?
Well, the only thing I would like to mention here is that I think the collaboration between administrators, educators, parents, students, this is so essential for a thriving educational ecosystem. And without collaboration, this will not work. So I think they need to work in tandem, especially the administrators and teachers. That collaboration is very, very important. And open communication.
Right.
I think that is essential.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge on our platform, ma'am.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
great day. I'll end the session now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.